Let's roll straight into it as if you're sitting across from me at my kitchen table on a snowy Iowa morning, coffee in hand, hearing this whole absurd, maddening, kind of hilarious story. No filter, no dramatic pauses, just the real thing, breath and all. They say timing is everything, right? Well, try this 17 minutes after the power company blasted out a warning about rolling blackouts with a brutal winter storm on its heels. I found myself standing in my living room in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, holding a crisp letter from the Meadowbrook Heights Community Association. Effective immediately, it said, "All generators banned." It was so on the nose, I half laughed and checked the return address just to make sure this wasn't some prank. But nope, official as could be signed by Deborah Hutchinson herself. And right then I just knew this was about to get ugly. My name's Brandon Kelly. I'd been living in this peaceful suburb for 3 years, long enough to know better, I guess. Working from home as a software consultant means reliable power is my lifeline, not a luxury. When I bought my place on Willow Creek Drive, generator rules weren't on anybody's lips. In fact, the seller even mentioned his backup, Jenny. You never know in Iowa, he'd said, and he wasn't kidding. 2 years back, a summer storm knocked out our power for 4 solid days. Lesson learned, I bought myself a Honda, installed it up to code, did everything right. But this letter from Deborah, God the tone. There's a special kind of self-importance people grow when you hand them a gavel and a rule book, and she'd cultivated it to perfection. Citing noise pollution, property values, aesthetics, and a threat of $200 a day fines for violators. If you're imagining my blood pressure creeping up as I read it, you're spot on. Here's the punchline. All this was landing 5 days before the storm of the decade, the kind of system that drops snow by the foot and knocks out half the grid for a weekend. The power company was already waving red flags. And now my HOA, by which I mean Deborah and her merry band, picks this exact week to go nuclear on generators. First call I make is to Marcus 2 houses down. He picks up, and before I get a word in, says, "You get the letter too." Marcus has a wife who runs a home medical device, and he was fuming. I called Deborah, he says. She told me no exceptions. Get a battery, go to a hotel. You try moving 2 kids and medical equipment into a hotel in a blizzard. The more we talked, the angrier I got, not just for me, but for my neighbors. Turns out at least 8 families on our street alone had generators, and all of us were staring down the barrel of this new rule. I'm no lawyer, but I'm not a pushover either. I dug through the HOA's covenant-dense, sleep-inducing stuff, but important. Sure, they could regulate external equipment, but there were clauses about emergency preparedness, reasonable accommodation, and here's the kicker: 30 days notice before changing any rule that affected property use. Deborah gave us 0, not even a heads up. Not even a "hey neighbor, heads up, we're thinking about making your life hell." So I wrote the board a polite but direct email pointing out the 30-day rule, emergency preparedness, and asking them to at least wait until after the storm. Next morning I get a reply: pure Stonewall Emergency Authority, multiple complaints, rule stands. Signed, of course, by Deborah. Now I'd been through one October outage where I ran my new inverter generator quiet as a mouse 50 feet from the nearest house. The only person close enough to be bothered, Deborah, whose kitchen window looked straight at my shed. I could just picture her arms crossed, watching my yard, plotting her next move. This was personal. I told Marcus I think she's targeting us. He agreed, but what do? HOAs have teeth, ignore the fines, they slap a lien on your house. Lawyer up, it's time, money, and stress. But the storm was coming, tick, tick, tick. Now, I'm not proud of what happened next, but I got a little creative. Called my friend Jennifer, who does real estate law. "Jennifer, if my HOA bans generators on my property, does that extend to public streets?" She laughed. "Nope. Public streets are city business." That was all I needed to hear. My lot was on a corner, one side along Willow Creek Drive, the other backing up to Maple Court, both city property. So I prepped. Bought a weatherproof cover, long cords, tested everything. Friday night the storm hit hard. By midnight a foot of snow on the ground whined, howling temp down to 3 degrees. Power went out at 1:15 a.m. I got dressed, hauled my generator into my truck, parked it on the street, ran my cords through a basement window, and bam, my house was back online. I watched from my living room window, sipping hot coffee while the rest of the street sat in the dark. Even Deborah's house. Morning came storm raging, and right on cue the doorbell rings. There's Deborah, bundled up, cheeks red with cold and fury. "You're violating HOA regulations." She was already mad. "My generator is on city property, not HOA land," I said, holding the door open. "You want to come in and warm up?" She refused, shivering on my porch, threatening fines. "Call the city council," I told her. She huffed, stammered about the spirit of the rule, and stormed off, slipping a bit on my unsalted walk, not that I felt too guilty. Marcus called, laughing his head off when he heard my setup. He asked for help getting his own Jenny running from the street. Word got around. By noon, 5 trucks lined the curb, all humming with generators. Deborah drove by, glared, but couldn't touch us. The storm dragged on for 2 days, power out everywhere. Sunday, the HOA's lawyer calls, classic intimidation, accusing me of circumventing the rule. I told him, "Read the rule." My generator's not on HOA property. He threatened reviewing options. I told him to go for it. Power finally came back. HOA called an emergency meeting. The community showed up, packed into the clubhouse. People wanted answers. Deborah tried her usual spiel about multiple complaints, but nobody could name a single neighbor who'd actually complained. Marcus called for a vote to remove her as president. My lawyer friend Jennifer, in the crowd, quoted the bylaws. The board voted, hands shot up. Deborah was out just like that. It felt good. But karma, as always, has a long fuse. 2 weeks later, my storage shed gets broken into, generator gone. Security footage, figure in black, moving fast, nothing else taken. Cops came, shrugged. Maybe a grudge, maybe not. But over the next week, Marcus and 3 other neighbors lost their generators too. I called the police again, gave them the pattern. This time they got serious, checked pawn shops, Craigslist, and finally they got lucky. A storage facility's cameras caught Deborah loading our generators into a rented unit. She'd tried to sell them off, but the cops caught her red-handed. Arrested, charged with burglary, grand theft, she went to trial. Judge read her the riot act, said she'd betrayed the trust of the community. 4 years in prison, parole possible, after 2+ restitution. At sentencing, Deborah just looked small, deflated, nothing like the tyrant who'd once ruled our street. Marcus and I stood in the hallway after shaking our heads. "All this because she hated generators," he said. "No," I told him, "because she thought she owned us. That was the real issue." Life moved on. HOA board actually did its job, suspended the generator rule, refunded fines, and made the whole process transparent. Neighbors looked out for each other. I helped Margaret next door hook up her heater during the next storm. The HOA never tried to ban generators again. The board's new motto was, "Be a good neighbor, use common sense." Refreshing. Deborah's story ended as you'd expect, prison, divorce house foreclosed. She wrote me a letter from jail apologizing, saying she'd let anger get the better of her. Maybe she meant it, maybe not. I wrote back, wished her luck. Honestly, I didn't hate her. I just wanted to live in peace. That's the lesson. I guess the big one that hit me somewhere between losing my generator and helping my neighbor. Rules are fine. Order's fine. But when rules become weapons and people forget the point of community, you end up with good folks freezing in the dark while someone with a title feels powerful. Standing up to that isn't just about generators, it's about drawing a line, saying, this far, no further. Sometimes that means finding the loophole, sometimes it means facing down the bully. Either way, you gotta do it. The last storm power went out. I fired up my generator, legal, safe, no drama. Marcus texted, "Running yours." "Yep," I replied. Boring, right? Thank God, he wrote back. That's what justice felt like. Not a victory dance, not payback, just boring, blessed normalcy. So let me throw it to you. Where do you draw the line between rules and reason? Ever stood up to someone who went too far, even when it meant rocking the boat? And who's responsible when power gets abused? The board, the bullies, or the bystanders who keep quiet? Drop your thoughts below or share your own HOA horror story. Let's keep this conversation going, because at the end of the day, it's not just about generators. It's about community common sense and knowing when to fight for what's right.